Welcome to the Voice of Retail. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc. This podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Retail Council of Canada. For this episode, we are taking more than a Hallmark moment to get to know Carolyn Spriet, the President of Hallmark Canada. In a wide-ranging interview, we get to learn more about the Hallmark business. From humble beginnings in 1910, the Hallmark brand continues to evolve across its business portfolios. From the Hallmark Channel content on the W Network to the company's Crayola subsidiary. Hey, did you know they own Crayola? And of course, on the greeting card front, gifts, ornaments, and innovative interactive solutions, all found in over 3,300 locations in Canada alone. Carolyn shares her perspective with over 25 years of experience on retail strategy, differentiation, partnership and direct-to-consumer retail, the future of work, and insights from her day at the Ogdensburn Future Leaders of Tomorrow Summit, where she met and talked with youth from across Canada to learn and share ideas.
You know, when it comes to attracting a talent and being able to maintain key talent, I just think that you're not going to be competitive if you wanted to go back the old way. But on the more positive side, I just think that I believe we're actually getting more of the heart and soul out of people.
Carolyn, welcome to the Voice of Retail podcast. How are you doing this afternoon?
Great. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me today.
Well, I'm excited about the conversation because I've been working up myself all week to say this. I'm looking forward to my Hallmark moment with you.
I love it. I love it. This is going to be a good call.
Listen, thanks again for joining me. Let's jump right in. Tell us a bit about yourself, your background, and your role at Hallmark Canada.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a homegrown Canadian. I had a 25-year career in the consumer goods industry, largely in Toronto. My functional background is sales and marketing, but I've been involved for the past 15 years in general management roles. My early years were spent at Unilever, which you might know as a large multinational CPG company. And then following that, I led a Canadian startup with a private equity organization, and that was called Sun Products. It was also in the consumer branded space, and ran that organization for about 8 years until we sold that to a global multinational. And then I took a little break, did some traveling, and joined Hallmark as the Canadian president in 2016. So I've had the pleasure of leading this team and this business here in Toronto for the last few years.
So as you reflect on your past experience, let's call it on the wholesale or the vendor side, you've got a bit of a hybrid role. I think we'll get into it a little bit more. But what's it been like sitting on both sides of the table, so to speak, at the same time?
Yeah, it's great because when we take a look at the retail space, when I came and joined Hallmark in 2016, there was so much going on in the retail space. I was only around for a year before COVID hit. And of course, that just changed everything in terms of how do you ready your products to be sold in a very, very different environment. So had to learn pretty quickly all the changing consumer and shopper behaviors. And then, of course, keeping true to how you present your brand to consumers at the same time. So the combination of the two has been helpful for sure.
Well, that's a big remit trying to figure out consumers in the COVID and post-COVID era. I don't think many of us quite figured it out. So this is going to be a great interview. If you figured it out, share.
No, it's just the beginning of finding it out and realizing that this has just been the beginning for consumers to redefine and have their voice and how they want things done from here on in. So we're needing to pivot and listen a lot more than we ever did.
Right. Let's talk about Hallmark. So, I mean, no one who's listening wouldn't know the name, but, it's a household name. That being said, they may not be aware of the scope and scale of the company. I mean, you're in retail, you're in wholesale, you've got TV, you've got entertainment. Talk about the business in Canada and around the world, just so that everybody kind of understands the scope and scale of Hallmark.
Yeah, sure. So Hallmark is still a privately held company. It was founded more than 100 years ago, and it has significant market share in over 100 countries around the world. It's the number one brand, and it's in the top 2% of the most loved brands in the world. So it's a very, very strong brand to work for. The division that I work in is the greetings division, which is the division that sells cards and gift wrap and packaged expressions and gifting and home decor and that that's where our retail space is. And our mission is really about helping people live caring and connected lives. And our goal is to try to help people make their moments meaningful. We can talk about that a little bit after. Also within Hallmark, though, we have two other big divisions, and you mentioned one. The Hallmark Channel is a very important part of our way to help people live caring, connected lives. And I think you've probably seen some of that programming on the W Channel in Canada. And then we also have Crayola, which is another business that's really about unleashing children's potential and creativity. So the company is really very, very dedicated to consumer experience. And in Canada, we have a dedicated cross-functional team that's headquartered here in Toronto. And we sell to the mass channels that you'd recognize: grocery, drug, mass merch, the clubs. But we also have an independent retail network of stores that specialize in unique offerings, including a lot of our specialized gifting and Gold Crown merchandise. So that's the brick and mortar business in Canada. And then this past year, in October of 2021, we launched Hallmark.ca, which was a digital shopping platform. So that's been really great for us and pretty important as we've seen retailers really shift to online purchases. So that's a little bit about Hallmark Canada.
Yeah, let me double click on a couple of those things. So did you say you owned Crayola, like the crayons?
Yes. Yeah.
I had no idea. I had no idea that was the case.
Yeah. Also owned by the Hall family. Yes. So that's one of our three divisions.
And in the stores, is it corporate owned or franchisees? I mean, you have shop and shop kind of wholesale relationships, but are these corporate owned stores that you have? And how many of those do you have in Canada?
No, we don't have any more corporate owned stores. All of our stores are independents. And so we've had long standing relationships with these folks. And so, we work very much with them on all parts of their partnership, whether it's helping with leases, whether it's helping with product assortment, staffing, training. So it's a very, very tight relationship, but they are independently owned.
You foreshadowed a bit of our conversation at the beginning, just talking about what is my next question. You know, when you first took the role on versus how you think about the role today post-COVID, what do you think? What changed in your mind in terms of retail strategies as you assessed the business before you took the opportunity? Just when you sat in that chair and you said, "Okay, then COVID hit." How are you thinking at all differently now than you would have been 2 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the biggest piece is that there's massive changes in terms of consumer expectations and shopping behaviors. And when I can touch on a few of those, but those have radically changed how we set our own objectives and operate our business. For the first thing in cards, for example, COVID actually was a really positive thing for our industry because people were really feeling very disconnected and isolated on a personal level from people. And they were very, very clear that they wanted to connect more in more personal, meaningful ways than the Zoom and the Teams calls that they were having. So the first thing is we started looking at the content of our cards and trying to determine whether or not the messaging that we had available was still appropriate based on how people were feeling. We also knew that people were wanting to not go into stores for fear of safety or they didn't want to touch a bunch of cards that people might have had before them. So the online really, really pivoted quickly.
And that shopping, just to, that shop, pull on that thread a bit, that shopping journey is really, now that I think of it, what we heard from a lot of retailers, what I heard was that, customers were very mission oriented. They knew what they wanted. They were going in. They weren't lingering. They weren't browsing. They got what they came to get. And that's kind of almost the antithesis in my mind of shopping for a great card. I mean, you want to linger and look at different cards. And boy, that I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's a real gnarly one to take on, right?
It's interesting because people will say they want to hurry. And there are occasions when they do want to get in and get out. But at the same time, they feel intense pressure to get the exact right card that says the right thing. So our job is to be very, very helpful in how to navigate them to where they're going to want to go. And so that's where signage and that's where layout and really thinking through how to maximize the positive experience, but minimize the negative of it taking too long. So it is a bit of a different category that way for sure.
Well, you're going to have to tune in next week. I'm interviewing a professor from Columbia, Eric Johnson, on his book, The Elements of Choice. And he's written apparently the Bible on how people make choices. So tune into that.
Fantastic.
Let's talk about this interesting transition between and amongst being both direct and a wholesale. I had a great conversation with Wendy Bennison, who was a board member of Retail Council of Canada, and now she's at Saks, which is men's apparel. And they both sell direct to consumers, but have great wholesale relationships. And we talked about that art and science of managing that relationship, those relationships. So it's 1 + 1 = 3. Talk about how you approach that now that you're, particularly with the .ca in that game.
Right. So, I think more than ever, you really have to start with understanding your retailer strategies and needs, because you do have to find and create unique shopping experiences that are different by retailer, and they can't be competing and really, overlapping. So when I think about independent retailers, for example, a lot of our independent retailers tend to be in smaller communities, and they do really, really well with gifting and keepsake products. So we really try to offer them a range of products that are not available anywhere else. So there's some exclusivity plays there, but there's also some assortment generally in the whole Hallmark line. So we sort of look at independence as being the premium experience on Hallmark product offering, and we make sure that when people go in the store, they feel that way. When we take a look at mass merch, our biggest mass merch customer is interested in really driving their online business. So in that case, we're really partnering to be the first to market in Canada to have cards online available in a pickup and either a delivery or a pickup in store. So we really are getting very much behind that for that retailer, because that is serving their corporate objectives. When we take a look at grocery, they're looking for ways to cross merchandise to be able to pick up that extra revenue when it comes from an impulse purchase. So for those customers, we have different displays and approaches to hit them. Dollar stores, they're looking for value. And so we have to figure out how to provide them with the assortment that they need. So I would say, compared to all the other categories I've ever worked, it's a little bit easier at Hallmark because our product range is so wide, and our ability to create different presentation materials, whether it's displays or other, is so varied that you really can have a very different look. It's a lot harder when you're selling a single unit, right, that just is on another shelf.
Yeah. Which size of detergent would you like, and which channel kind of?
Exactly. Right? I did that for 13 years. Yes. Yeah,
I know. Okay. You get the one with the red cap. You get the one with the blue cap. They're very different products. How many SKUs would you have? I was thinking about that. There must be a tremendous amount of cards, and it must be a tremendous turn. And do you do drops and seasonal things? Like, if in any given year, how many? What's your choice? How many products do you have within the category?
Oh, it's insane.
Thousands, right? It's gotta be thousands,
our total card line that we draw from can be upwards of 4,000. So our job really is to take the card line and then to make smart subsets based on the channel of trade and based on the goals of the retailer to be able to set that up. So, for example, in drug, you might really heavy up on care and concern and wellness and health. Yeah. And then, others, you might have higher birthday if that's a birthday destination. So that's what I really learned moving from sort of traditional CPG into Hallmark, is that the level of depth and detail to be able to deliver very customized products is just, it's mind-boggling. And I'm still learning every day how to do it. That's for sure.
It's such an interesting category, because if I cast my mind back to when I first got into .com in the 2000s, early 2000s, it was all print cards, like books were going to go away. Life didn't turn out that way, because consumers appreciate what you do, right? You guys must do a fair bit of research. Is that a growing trend that's kind of in one way drawn towards online shopping, another way pulling back from online experiences to a more physical experience? Yeah.
Well, there's some interesting things. For example, as you know, a lot of people say to me, well, why don't you just have it all digital online? Do you need a hard card? Well, consumer research will tell you very clearly that people believe that the actual card and the process of writing a handwritten note into a card and either giving it or mailing it is part of the care that they show. And most people would say, my mother would never accept the card, or my husband would never accept, or my wife would never accept the card, because there is a bunch of care that comes from that. So the hard card itself absolutely has relevance, because if it didn't, I think you wouldn't see them. You would see a digital, but that is not considered by consumers to be a substitution. We are doing some cool innovation, though, that's kind of bringing in digital and the hard card together, which is we have some digital greeting cards where you can, through our website, actually create a video that goes along with the QR code in your card so that you are giving the hard card, you're writing the message, and then you're also able to create a really cool video with a bunch of people in it together. So there's ways to innovate, but certainly the hard card still is very much a value. And the online shopping experience, I think we thought that it would be hard for people to buy cards online, but we're really finding very, very easy ways of selecting the top 10 birthday cards and helping people to really zero in and make sure that the card that they get is not being compromised because of choice or because of inability to access.
Let's talk about what brought us here today, actually. Initially, you participated in the Ogden-Bernson Future Leaders of Tomorrow Summit. So that's what actually got each of us on our respective radar screens. Tell me about what that was all about and why you participated and what you learned.
Yeah, I felt so lucky to be asked to be a part of this program. I was really impressed. Essentially what it is it's a program that's designed to help students connect in with business leaders. And these students are chosen as sort of the promising future leaders, the top 50. And they were brought into a session where they had all sorts of learning sessions and speaker panels, and then also time with a CEO to have hands-on learning, not only doing a case, but it could have been talking about a specific topic or asking questions. So it's a global initiative that Ogden-Bernson has put together, and it's been running in Canada, for the last 8 years. But they have matched, it's like 126 students and 124 CEOs from across multiple countries. So this is the first virtual year, and that meant that there was more students that could participate. So I had 8 students, and I was really excited to be a part of it because I actually also have 3 adult age children. I have one son just graduated from university and is navigating his first job. And I also have a daughter in the program, in third year program, who's trying to figure out career. So I know firsthand how hard it is to figure that out, especially if you don't have role models at home to be able to kind of help you get there. So I felt like this is such a great thing to be able to give back. I've been given so much opportunity by mentors and different people to help me along the way. So I just was really interested in being a part of it.
Now, when you reflect on what you heard from these bright young folks, anything jump out at you? Did you walk away? Did you turn that computer screen on feeling very positive? I mean, you're of course also talking to some very high potential people, but that doesn't mean everything's going to work out right. But what did you hear from them?
I think the thing that I really picked up really quickly was just the great energy that was coming from, these young leaders. They're super enthusiastic. These were people that were willing to kind of work to educate themselves on how to get better. So I was dealing with people that were just really positive, optimistic kind of go-getters. They were very, very verbal about their perspectives. I think their ideas are modern, and I think they're important to consider. They had a lot to say in terms of work-life balance and their expectations on flexibility and training. And, we talked a little bit about, how to manage all of these things and also to accept, though, that you are going into a workplace where it's not always easy to manage those things. So I think it was a really good dialogue for both sides to sort of see how they're looking at it. I think the other thing that really struck me was just that I realized that a lot of students really don't have a lot of personal networks to help them penetrate the job market. There's a lot of students who have parents that are new Canadians that, can't direct them in how do you find a business job in Canada. And so I just found it was just an exciting place to imagine the possibilities to help people and to mentor and train some of these really fantastic kids that are looking for work.
Do you think about, or do you reflect on, you mentioned it, work from home? I mean, clearly in my mind, one of the biggest structural changes post-COVID is the workplace. Work from home is, I think, in some way, shape, or form, has refashioned work potentially irrevocably. So, but the challenge, of course, is there's it's very productive or can be productive for some, but there's not a lot of adhesion to the workplace or brand or coworkers. Are you starting to reflect on how to structure a business to get the best of both worlds, to get that both productivity and people can live their lifestyles, but at the same time feel like they're part of something and not just, on another Snap channel that they turn off and on based on the employer?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that my opinion now, having worked, and I think our organization having worked successfully for 2 years in a work from home scenario, has radically changed my view of what risks and opportunities exist. And I would say that I would have no interest in going back to a 5-day-a-week sort of old school way. And the reason for that is that I think that, when it comes to attracting a talent and being able to maintain key talent, I just think that you're not going to be competitive if you wanted to go back the old way. But on the more positive side, I just think that at the end of the day, I believe we're actually getting more of the heart and soul out of people in the work from home environment. I mean, I think that some people might argue that the boundaries have made it difficult for them to operate, because where does work end and where does work start? I would say there has been no downside to the company. I would say that we have to manage people's mental health, though. We need to manage and help people be able to figure out, especially younger people, of how to navigate. When I was at the CEO Day, I shared that when I reflected back on my career, I realized that the first 10 years of my life in work, I was just sponging off of listening to leaders, watching people do their work and learning. And I feel like that is probably the biggest reason why I do want to bring a back to work element to the company, because I think a lot of young people are not able to see that, and a lot of new hires are not feeling connected. So there's that. And then I also think that work is very, it's challenging business environment we're all living in. And I think the camaraderie that comes from good relationships and having a little bit of fun and blowing off steam together goes a long way for people to kind of maintain the challenge of work. So I think there's a lot of smart reasons to go back, but I also think there's a lot of smart reasons to say, how do we find a way that's a bit of a hybrid? And that's really, I have a very strong view on that one.
Is there room in your thinking for an environment where you get the high productivity that you've described, but at the same time you build a cohesive team, and it isn't taking place in a traditional work setting or office setting? Maybe more frequently you're doing offsites together, or something, what we used to call offsites. I don't know what we call them anymore. Where you say, well, let's all go to this conference together. And it used to be one person would go and then report back, but let's all go and let's spend the day together. And that, instead of getting together in an office for meetings, becomes a proxy for team building. Are you thinking about those kind of different dimensions as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you think about offsites, those are energy building, energy receiving sessions. They're learning sessions. They're an opportunity for you to bring a fresh perspective. So I actually do think maybe you go back to the office and it's not a traditional work environment. Maybe you have tables like Starbucks style, and maybe there is a component that's you're in store and you're in retail more often, and you are finding ways to be able to do your catch-ups in coffee shops, but you're really just trying to make sure that you're staying close to your business. And I'm feeling more and more and more that we were never really close to our business sitting out in a head office, on the far end of town. I mean, finding ways to be connected actually makes a lot of sense, and to stay close to your top sales leaders and your top people that are coming up with the ideas.
Well, it sounds like a great experience. Let's pivot to advice perhaps for some of the listeners around your experience and what you've experienced, and your great experience on both sides of the table. 2 starts, I'm going to phrase it in a 2 start and 1 stop, based on what you learned about consumers, the retail game over your career, and what you're thinking is going to be important for the next couple of years. 2 things the listeners, retailers, should start doing, and 1 thing maybe they should stop if they're doing it. Maybe the environment's changed. Give me some advice.
All right, 2 starts. Well, if I think about what I've really learned in the last 2 COVID years in retail, is that you want to get out earlier on your seasonal sales. So we are really seeing that people are moving on. There's a trend of people wanting to buy early. I think we've seen everybody talk about the focus on building your home and creating home decor and family traditions, and all these things that are been playing as trends through COVID are causing people to really want to celebrate the seasons. So we are seeing people now buying more than double, twice as fast as they used to, as opposed to the day before. So we want to make sure our product is out. We want to think about having Christmas ready in the summertime. Hallmark has a huge Christmas business, and we're just seeing every year when we advance it by 30 days, we're selling more and more and more. So it's kind of trying to get ahead of the curve. If you think about it, I mean, Costco has been doing that for years, which is, being in advance of the season, and we are just seeing huge benefits. So that'd be the first one, and doing it in a way that's, make it exciting for them and make it feel like they're really getting an edge against people that aren't buying early. So better product, specialty product up front. So that's the first thing. I think the other start, maybe this one seems obvious, but it's just really hitting me how it's more convenient to develop your strategies off of what your corporate strategies are, but your strategies have to be developed on the changing consumer or shopper mindset. So I think we need to be clear more than ever on what specifically are the changing needs, and are we making company strategies to support those. So for example, online, there are things we've done in there with regards to testing things like free shipping and testing things like products we weren't quite ready for, but we said we were going to do because we need to be there at the right time. The other piece would be, do we have more care and concern cards? Are we pivoting fast enough? Do we need to figure out how to get manufacturing of those done? And we need to make other shifts in our business because that's what they want. I think the other piece is having gifting products where they want. It's convenient for us to have them in certain locations, but if we really want to be where they're shopping, we need to adjust that. So I think it's just convenient to want to keep doing the same things. And I think that there is a general fatigue that people are feeling about the constant change that's happening. But at the end of the day, your consumer has to be driving what you're doing. And so I'd say keep that shopper consumer mindset, even when it's inconvenient, because I think in the end, that's how you're going to be successful. I mean, I think the stop would have to be just stop waiting for the perfect time to make the changes you need in your business. Again, I think we're running hard. A lot of us feel that we don't have a lot of time to be as reflective as we want to, but I think we have to keep assessing our plans and our operations. And if we can change the mindset from it being, a liberating and positive experience to imagine doing things differently as opposed to a chore, whether that's, making investments in your leadership or changes in your leadership or changes in process or technology, starting that hard but important initiative. I mean, I think that sometimes we keep pushing things off that just seem too onerous to start, but I think we got to remember to do it because somebody else will do it first.
Well, it's great advice. Last question for you. What's next? I mean, there's a lot of next going on, so sometimes it's a funny question, but anything you wanted to call out that's top of mind in terms of what's next for the business that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's just really more about how do we keep launching, innovation that allows us to keep with the mission of being able to help people care and connect. I talked to you about things like video greetings, and we're really upping our online capability and our assortment. So we're really excited about that, and there'll be some announcements on that on our website soon. And lots of new gifts, lots of new approaches to help people to better their home, both inside and outside. That is very much what consumers are looking for. But I think if you want to learn more, I mean, Hallmark.ca is a great resource for all things Hallmark. You can see our full product line. There's lots of cool ideas on tips for party planning and DIY crafting and the history of holidays. There's recipes. There's all sorts of things, even teaching you how to write a thank you card or a condolence card or general messages. So, I mean, I think what we want to do is keep inspiring people with new ideas and fresh ideas so that they're really able to connect, especially as we come after 2 years of people feeling really isolated and disconnected from the people that they love.
No better timing to think about reconnecting and connecting people, and no better organization. So thanks so much for joining me on The Voice of Retail. It's great to meet you and great to hear all about the business and your perspectives and what you learned from the youth. It's very exciting. And like I said, thanks again for joining me on The Voice of Retail.
Thanks so much, Michael. It was great. Appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning into this special episode of The Voice of Retail. If you haven't already, be sure and click and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform so new episodes will land automatically twice a week. And check out my other retail industry media properties, the Remarkable Retail Podcast, Conversations with Commerce Next Podcast, and the Food Professor Podcast with Dr. Sylvain Charlebois. Last but not least, if you're into barbecue, check out my all-new YouTube barbecue show, Last Request Barbecue, with new episodes each and every week. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, president of ME LeBlanc Company and Maven Media. And if you're looking for more content or want to chat, follow me on LinkedIn or visit my website at meleblanc.co. Have a safe week, everyone.